What do you think may be the biggest challenge facing the European Chip Act?
Well, I mean, the European Chips Act it has very ambitious goals, right? So it aims to increase the market share of European chip production to 20% from currently 9%, which would involve quadrupling basically the production figures, but also the workforce that is a highly specialized workforce. Which brings me to one of the biggest challenges. I think building that workforce will not be easy. Europe is suffering from a shortage of specialized labor in many sectors. There is not enough workers also in green industry and all of other strategic areas. And in chips industry, it's the level of expertise you need to develop is even higher often. So I could imagine that is a bottleneck. Then I think an issue, of course, is because now the EU wants to build more fabs, wants to build up manufacturing capacity. One of the reasons is our considerations of strategic autonomy, which it makes sense. But the problem is that there is not that much manufacturing of chips going on at the moment. So the expertise in that first needs to be further developed. And what we see now is that it's mainly foreign companies that invite to come over, like Intel in Germany, who invested something like 17 billion, and the German state is putting another around 10 billion as well. So this is, on the one hand, I think in the long run, this is probably can help to develop expertise also in Europe to invite these foreign expert companies in. But of course, it's not the same as if you build your own industry, especially when the idea is to increase strategic autonomy. And of course, the issue with this CHIPS Act is that with any industrial policy program, there are certain things that can go wrong when it comes to planning a production or planning an ecosystem that if you put it on the drawing board. So for example, how to evaluate properly demand and supply. The chips industry in the past 50 years has been famous for having moments of gluts of chips production where then there was too much supply, and even in the private sector, and something like that, of course, can happen in Europe too, especially considering the very high competition that exists from Asia. I think it's just very hard to match that. So, and then also to build the chips in a way that they are cost effective, that they are competitive on the market. And Europe, of course, at the moment has problems with high energy prices, and that also makes them less competitive. So I think these are all things to consider. I believe while there is a case to be made to build chips in Europe just for strategic autonomy reasons, I think it probably would also make sense to focus on the more upstream parts of the chips production process, meaning on design, research, and at the same time building stronger trade links with those countries that focus on production. I think these are some of the considerations when it comes to the CHIPS Act and what could go, where the threats could be to make this a successful program. And maybe one more thing I should mention as well. The CHIPS Act earmarks 11 billion on EU level financing, but it hopes to mobilize a lot of private financing as well. And it really relies on state aid. And state aid means that member states of the European Union are allowed to sort of circumvent the old idea of that industrial policy should not be made by member states, but that they can invest more indirectly. So like Germany is doing right now with the chips factory in Magdeburg. But that has also the issue that richer member states of the European Union have much more capacities to do so than those who don't have the same resources and those who are already highly indebted. So that can create imbalances within Europe, and it can endanger the single market, where the single market's idea is that you have a level playing field where competition is just and equal. And disrupting that is a very dangerous move, because the single market at the same time is one of the biggest assets that Europe has, because it is a market of 400 million people. And being able to compete there on a level playing field, it really creates the kind of efficiencies and the economies of scale and that are important to build successful companies. So the problem here is going back to financing, that it should not rely too much on state aid. And if it does, then you have these kind of issues that I just mentioned.